votre toast, je peux vous le rendre, Seigneur, Seigneur, car avec les soldats, il est...
Welcome back to the Blue Lord series, where we aspire to be tanky behemoths. We'll go over the most optimal skills, when you get them, and what tripods you can use in order to maximize your speedrun through the leveling process. The hardest part about being a Gunlancer is leveling it, and the back jump. Gunlancer isn't the fastest class at leveling, but it isn't the slowest either. This is why I want to give you some tips in hopes of making the process smoother. Keep in mind this is not the end all be all, and there is no one correct way to go about the long process of leveling. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's probably best to switch skills and tripods in and out, but I'll give you just a general direction of the best skills with their most optimal tripods in order to set you off in the right direction. After that, feel free to experiment with other tripods and skills to see if they may work better for your situation. Let's get into it. So when you first talk to Beatrice and tell her you want to be a Lancer from the gate, and she gives you her number for late night visits later on, and she drops you off in Artemis, where you start out with a few skills that are absolute garbage, you want to use either Fire Bullet or Dash Upper Fire with respective tripods if the skill points allow. It's up to you to choose which combination of skill points distributed works best, but either way these skills are not the best. I suggest Fire Bullet because it has a low cooldown and you can spam it quite often for decent damage hit. At level 12, we get our first decent skill called Leap Attack. This attack is the first hard-hitting skill with decent AoE and movement. If possible, I would max this out first with the following tripods. For first tripod, you can either go Direct Blow, which gives more damage, or Quick Prep, which gives 3-second cooldown reduction. For second tripod, you can go Shockwave, which does an instant 20% extra damage with a big AoE upon landing, but it does down foes, which keeps them from moving towards you if they don't die within 1 or 2 jumps. They won't be running after you because they're too busy floor POVing you, and you may have to run back to them, and this may take more time. If this is the case, then use Current Zone instead, which creates a dot on the ground, which does more damage over time, and doesn't keep the enemies down. Remember, there is no one optimal way for every situation. It's good to switch up tripods often, depending on your circumstances during leveling. So feel free to play with tripods and test out what works for you in that chunk of leveling content that you're doing. Third tripod is Continuous Jump, which gives double the jump and double the AoE upon landing. At level 14, we get Guardian Thunder. I would prioritize maxing this skill over everything at this point. Take points out of other skills if you have to in order to get this to max. For leveling, you want first tripod to be Quick Prep, which gives cooldown reduction once again, and then for second tripod, a Tough Blow, which gives 25% more damage, and for third tripod, it's Cross Thunder, which gives 50% additional damage, as well as a cross-shaped thunder shooting across in all cardinal directions for extra AoE. When you gather up mobs and press this skill, it'll instantly erase most of all enemies in one shot, so keep this one handy early on. At level 18 we get Rush Shield. I use this as a movement skill since we run slow and it's quite handy when rushing from place to place where there are no mounts. Later on though, if you do have points to spare, I suggest Quick Prep, which is CDR once again. Second is Light Step, which gives you movement speed during rush, and Chariot for the third, which increases the damage of your attack every hit up to 140% damage. This adds up to a big chunk of damage. You don't need to max this skill right away. As said before, it's an optional skill for when you have more skill points later on. When you first get this, use it for movement purposes first, as skill points at this time in the game are better distributed into Guardian Thunder. At 20 we get Charge Stinger. This is a heavy hitting charge attack that should be maxed out for chunking big damage from boss battles. It doesn't have the best AoE, but it has a big distance that it covers, and you can charge bosses from afar to get the jump on them with a massive hit to give you an advantage. I wasn't the biggest fan of this skill because of the charging, but it's definitely still strong and can be used for clearing beefier mobs. The tripods are as follows. One is Weakness, which gives 20% more damage to boss mobs. The second is Charge Enhancement, that gives 15% more damage for higher charging stages, which goes in tandem with the third tripod, Last Charge, which increases the charge one more stage and gives 70% more damage total, plus the 20% extra from the extra charge from the second tripod. This thing hits super hard, so give it a shot on tougher mobs and even frailer mobs, but keep in mind the cooldown on this skill is a hefty 30 seconds. At 24 we got Warrior Scream. Now this skill is the ultimate trash mob clear. You want to at least get this to level 7 first to get the first 2 tripods. First being quick prep for the CDR, and then weak meat and strong food shield, which does 200% more damage to trash mobs. This is going to erase every trash mob on the screen, but just has a long cooldown time. If you so want and feel you can spare the points, you can go 10 skill points into weakness exposure, but it's not necessary. The only reason I recommend this is so that you can combo it with Charge Stinger. This is because the tripod gives 9% more damage on head attack, and when screamed on top of the 3% for a total of 12% extra damage during the taunt. Since Charge Stinger is a head attack, you can taunt, shield, then unleash a devastating blow to the face. This is also a great way to practice building your shield gauge with taunt, then toggling it on and going into an attack mode. This is a very simple yet effective beginner combo. I'd recommend trying to get used to toggling your shield and using it in the first place, which is very useful for making boss fights easier. At 40 we get another devastating skill called Spear Shot. At max, this one does lots of damage and has decent range and AoE that collects mobs together. The first tripod is Sophisticated Movement, which increases the attack speed by 15%. Second tripod is Weakness, that does 40% more damage to boss mobs. Third tripod is Proximity Explosion, which turns the skill into charging and does 105% more damage on full charge. These are the skills I'd recommend using, but what about skills to avoid? Well, there are a few that are pretty non-useful during leveling with the purpose of going faster. Anything defensive like Neresia Shield won't really be needed during leveling. You can use the first tripod if needed for movement speed, but that's about it. In my opinion though, it's better to equip a damage skill instead and keep movement with Rush Shield, which can also do damage. The next is Counter Spear, since you don't want to be depending on the lower mob's slow attacks in order to execute an attack yourself. While this can give you an instant shield and stagger immunity, it would only be useful for boss fights where that's a threat, so once again I'd recommend a damage skill over this to overall burn down the mobs faster. Even still, if your preference is to have this utility and find it more useful over a damage skill when facing troublesome bosses, feel free to swap it in when you feel it's necessary. Next, I'll show you how much damage the skills mentioned before do, and also give you a glimpse into how the skills work and their attack animations and AoE potential. This will give you a general idea on how to use the skill and give you a preview to help you visualize how you'd be putting them to use on the field, as well as comparing their damage. And that's it. Go out there and melt everything you can as quickly as possible, and see you guys at the top. I love that we have such a high interest in Blue Lord, and hope to see you guys breaking faces in half at the endgame. Come chill with me at twitch.tv/agreedy and put some hair on that chest. Later.